Squirting is a myth from porn, right? Well, no, not exactly. Squirting might feel like the final sticky sexual frontier, and that's mostly because it is rarely spoken about outside the world of porn. It is very unlikely that you were taught about squirting, which is the involuntary release of fluid during knacking, in your health class. So it is natural to have questions. And in fact, anything you might have seen in porn may not be an accurate representation of what squirting looks like. Pornography may have exaggerated the amount and the force of fluid released during squirting for cinematic effect. It probably comes as no surprise to you that a lot of mainstream porn doesn't represent what sex looks like for many people. But if you're curious about what squirting is, where it comes from, and if it's even a real thing, I've got you covered. Here is everything you need to know. What is squirting? Let's start with the basics. What is squirting? There are a few substances that come from the kitty area during knacking activity. But for all intents and purposes, squirting is a term describing the release of a colorless, odorless fluid during knacking activity. So now that we know what it is, let's explore why it can happen. When you are aroused or turned on, your heart rate quickens and the blood flow to your kitty, the internal part of the kitty anatomy, increases. This pushes fluid to the surface of your kitty walls, which is what is known as getting wet.
Hello, how are you? I am under the water. Please help me.
While all of this is tied to what happens when you're feeling frisky, this part isn't squirting. Squirting is a higher volume of liquid than just getting wet. It is being described as a gushing sensation rather than just feeling moist, and you will likely know if you've squirted. Some people may squirt when they achieve the big O, while others don't need to be actively climaxing. They just experience this gushing of liquid as a result of feeling really aroused. You could release 10 ml of liquid or more. Squirting can happen before orgasm or even in the absence of orgasm. In reality, squirting is not tied to the type or quality of the big O. Not everyone who has squirted in the past will squirt every time they knack, and you may never squirt at all.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here.
This is totally typical, and what's most important is that you feel fulfilled by and be confident about the knacking that you're having. The only other time you might experience what could be described as a gush of liquid is when you go pee. So it is easy to imagine squirting fluid as being the same as urine. But newsflash, the two aren't the same thing. One study looked at 7 women before and after they had squirted. Although the participants' bladders were found to be full before they squirted and were empty afterward, analysis of the squirting liquid found that it wasn't just pee, but something similar. In fact, the researchers also found that the majority of the women's fluid contained prostate-specific antigens, PSA, which is an enzyme that is produced in your skin's gland. Squirting fluid is largely made up of water and has higher amounts of uric acid, urea, creatinine, and sodium. During a 2022 study that also sought to understand squirting further, researchers came to a similar conclusion. They injected blue dye into the bladders of its female participants and found that in all cases the fluid released during squirting was blue. This suggested it has originated from the bladder, but it was also found to contain PSAs, meaning that the liquids must have come from both the bladder and the skin's gland. Not sure what the skin's glands are? You're not the only one, so here is a mini biology lesson, sometimes called the lesser vestibular glands. The skin's glands are also known as the female prostate, 2 ducts that are located in either side of your urethra, the tube connected to your bladder that allows pee to go out. The skin's glands are made of similar tissue to that of your clit. They've got some clever functions too. It is believed that the glands release antimicrobial substances, like zinc, which can stop the growth of bacteria to prevent urinary tract infections. What does squirting feel and look like? If you don't think you've ever squirted, you will likely be curious about what it feels like. However, as with all things with knacking, there is no such thing as one size fits all. Every knacking experience and the big O feels different, and the same applies to squirting. For some women, it is a pleasurable fullness they feel and a welcome release once the fluid is released. For other women, they may not feel anything at all and only notice that their sheets are wet. It feels so hot in here. Let me put on the AC. Whew, I feel better. Research found that 78.8% of women who reported squirting said that it was the enrichment of their knacking lives, as did 90% of their partners. So, for many, it does seem to be like a positive experience. But if squirting isn't your body's thing, that is totally normal. In fact, you're in the majority. Is it normal, and how common is it? Is squirting normal? Definitely. How common is it? That's trickier to say. I don't really know.
You were not informed too.
Partly because there hasn't been a clear consensus on what exactly squirting fluid is or where it comes from. A study found that among women who did squirt, most reported doing it a few times a week. So for women who do squirt, it seemed to be a common occurrence for them. It is hard to work out how squirting actually is because until 2011, published studies didn't always distinguish between the fluids released during the big O. That is despite the fact that in reality, there are a lot of different reasons why you might release liquid during knacking. They can include kitty lubrication when you're aroused, female ejaculate. This slightly differs from squirting. Stick with me here. Female ejaculate is also maiden. However, unlike squirting, female ejaculate is described as more of a trickle with about 1 ml of thick milky liquid being secreted. P. If you already experienced some incontinence, you might also have experienced coital incontinence. Coital incontinence can show up as a leaking urine with penetration as well as during the big O. Essentially, it is peeing a little bit during knacking and isn't the same as squirting. This isn't anything to be ashamed of. And if you've experienced coital incontinence, your doctor will be able to offer you different ways to manage it. Squirting liquid. The lack of distinctions between fluids released during knacking in scientific studies maybe why there is an unknown about how many people can actually squirt. But whatever the specific number, the main thing is understanding your own body. If that means squirting is a common part of knacking for you, then all power to you. And if it isn't, that's also okay. Is it a real thing? So now that you know what squirting is and where it comes from, you might be curious to know about why there are so many questions surrounding squirting, whether it is even real. Due to the fact that the research into squirting is still fairly new and limited, there are still a number of misconceptions surrounding it. The idea that it is made up of only pee is one of the common myths that has prevailed. There are plenty of others too. Some of the most common misconceptions I've heard are that squirting is a result of a really good orgasm, that it is something everyone should try to achieve, that everyone wants to do it, that it is a result of G-spot stimulation. The G-spot or the Grafenberg zone is thought to be located inside of your kitty on the upper wall. When you feel aroused or turned on, it swells and it might feel a little bit bumpy. The G-spot is a hotly contested part of your anatomy. While some people think you can achieve the big O from pressing the G-spot, the research has suggested that the G-spot doesn't exist in this way, and it is in fact part of the structure of the clit that is inside your body. Squirting isn't a surefire sign of a really good knacking or a strong orgasm. It doesn't reflect on you or your partner if you never squirt. It has got no link to bad or less enjoyable knacking. You might squirt during knacking sometimes, or not at all. But just talking about it, you might help bust some of the stigmas that surround pleasure and squirting. How does it work? It is still unknown why some people squirt and others don't. Everybody reacts differently to different knacking stimulations, and it is exciting to work out what pushes your button. However, you should never feel pressured to squirt. The most important thing is to enjoy the moment you're having. Knowing what's going on in your body might help you to understand squirting a little bit better. When you orgasm, the muscles in your vagina, uterus, and anus contract or squeeze. This is why you might feel a release of knacking tension. While squirting isn't always linked to orgasms, and research is still limited, it is thought that a similar thing happens when you squirt. I believe there is a contraction of the combination of the pelvic floor muscles, which causes the release of the squirting fluid. How to make yourself squirt? Remember, squirting isn't really the indication of the good knacking that you're having or the power of you reaching the big O. I don't quite know why yet, but some people can squirt while others can't. What I do know is that both are normal. I really don't know if this is something that all women can experience with the right stimulation, or if it is something only a selected few women can experience. My personal opinion is that not enough women know that it is an option. So it is something to explore to see if they can do it, either with partnered sex or masturbation. If you're up for experimenting, the most common directions given are to insert your finger or fingers into the kitty and using a comb header motion. Move your fingers along the interior vajay walls toward the front. However, anecdotally, women have experienced squirting with stimulation of many different areas of the body. Really, it is all about seeing what works best for you and just trying to have some fun along the way. Enjoy the sex that you're having, and if you can squirt, that might be an added bonus for you. There is a lot left to learn about squirting with such limited research available, and as a result, there are a lot of myths flying around. But long story short, if you can do it, it is completely normal. It can be pleasurable for some, but it is not necessarily like you may have seen in porn. On the other hand, if squirting isn't something you've ever experienced, squirting is not the end all, be all for an extraordinarily knacking experience. Focusing on squirting can take away from enjoying the actual beautiful moment that you're having. So take the pressure off and just have fun. And with this, I'm sure that all your squirting questions has been answered. But if you still have any other questions relating to squirting, leave them down there below in the comment section. I am ever ready to reply to all your comments. And I'm going to see you next time in my next video. Bye!